Now, let's take a little bit of a closer look at Dragon. One of the great things about being close to the space station is that we can use space station cameras to look at Dragon. But now that Dragon is on its way home, we don't have those external cameras. So here's an animation of what the capsule looks like. We've got the pressurized section, the capsule on the top, and the trunk or the unpressurized section on the bottom. That's where those solar panels that we manufacture in-house are located, soaking up the energy from the sun and turning it into power for the capsule. At the very top of the capsule is the nose cone. That is where the Dracos, the forward Dracos, are located. That nose cone is currently open, not closed like we saw in that animation. Once we get through the final maneuverings for the re-entry phase, we will close the nose cone capsule just before Dragon begins its atmospheric entry to protect that forward hatch there located along with those forward Dracos.
So we do want to stress to the public the need to respect this safety zone. Recovering a spacecraft from the water is a hazardous operation, and any other boats interfering increases the risk to not only the astronauts in Dragon, but the teams working to recover them from the water and the safety of those that may come too close. So for the safety of the crew, which you see there on your screen, your safety, we recommend you sit back and watch as we'll continue to bring you the best possible views of our astronauts' homecoming.
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, this deorbit burn is the last time that we will utilize our 4 forward Draco thrusters. Forward basically meaning at the top of the Dragon capsule. Dragon Freedom has not yet entered the Earth's atmosphere. This deorbit burn is what will line the vehicle up and put it on its final trajectory to the landing site right off the coast of Tallahassee, Florida. So basically, it is the last burn that the Dragon spacecraft executes and is what really locks it in for that precise landing. As you can see on your screen right now, Nick, Suni, Butch, and Aleksandr are using their screens to keep tabs on the burn duration, the Draco firings, and trajectory details such as entry angle, spacecraft perigee, and how much distance remains until deorbit burn termination. As I mentioned earlier, Dragon is flying itself. After 6 great years of successful recovery operations off the East Coast, we'll be moving all Dragon recovery operations back to the West Coast.
And as always, NASA and SpaceX jointly select our splashdown location. And for today, the prime recovery site is off the coast of Tallahassee, Florida. The selection process works with a lot of different variables, including the space station's orbital trajectory or path that it follows, what landing sites are available and have favorable weather, how much free flight capability Dragon has for the trip home, and the sleep schedules for the returning crew members, as well as, of course, the big one, the weather.
We'll start with calculating daily return options based off of the space station's current orbit and Dragon's capabilities to maneuver and line up for re-entry. The time from undock to landing at the primary site can vary from less than 6 hours to more than 39. Getting home the quickest comes with some obvious benefits, but we always have to make sure the crew is properly rested for dynamic operations, preventing us from scheduling 20-plus hour days for them, of course. Trajectory and ballistic experts provide the daily opportunities that would line up Dragon with the 7 landing zones and split them into what we call ascending and descending opportunities.
Dragon uses its Draco thrusters after leaving station to execute a series of altitude-lowering maneuvers and to line up with the selected primary site. It can also change to different alternative sites while in a free flight if sudden weather moves in that we may need to avoid. So, as we mentioned, weather is something we're constantly looking at, making the final call to proceed about 2.5 hours before the crew undocks. So for the Crew-9 return, we looked at a number of weather items. Some of the obvious ones are no rain or a chance of lightning in the recovery zone, both for the safety of the crew inside Dragon and the recovery teams in the water. And we're also looking for wind speeds to be less than 15 feet per second or about 10 miles per hour, and relatively calm seas so that we can safely execute recovery operations, which includes landing a helicopter on the recovery ship to fly Nick, Suni, Butch, and Aleksandr back to Florida. Once Dragon began flying today, we had a number of additional checkpoints to either proceed towards the primary site, head to the alternate, or select a new zone based on real-time weather data. These checks happened all the way up until we were in the final hours before the deorbit burn, which has just about a minute or so left in it. And this is the last burn in the trip home that commits Dragon to re-entering the Earth's atmosphere.
Now, we are currently waiting to conclude the deorbit burn. We've got less than a minute until that finishes. We will expect to hear a call out for nominal burn, which will confirm completion of that deorbit burn for Dragon Freedom. We can see images there from the touchscreen display panels that the crew utilizes in flight. We can see the visualization of exactly which one of the four forward Draco thrusters are firing. That's why you have kind of like a strobe effect there.
And if you're just joining us, you are looking at live views of the Dragon Freedom. On your left is Commander of Crew-9, Nick Hague. To his right is Roscosmos cosmonaut Aleksandr Gorbunov. And also in Gorbunov, that is Aleksandr Gorbunov. And then also in the capsule today is NASA astronauts Suni Williams and Butch Wilmore. We're awaiting confirmation that their deorbit burn is complete, which is the last burn that's going to help set them up on a trajectory to splash down off the coast of Florida.
Deorbit burn complete. Performance nominal.
We right there have our first view of Dragon Freedom coming home to Earth.
And that view is from the WB-57, which is one of NASA's high-altitude planes that is tracking. Now, because of the way that this camera is configured, it does look like it is dark, but it is indeed daytime, and you're beginning to see that plasma trail as Dragon re-enters the Earth's atmosphere. All of that is expected. We are anticipating an acquisition of signal around 2:51 p.m. Pacific time, so just minutes from now, and you may hear the core begin to hail out or call Dragon for communications and see if we can potentially get communications with them a little bit earlier. Following this, we'll have two events in rapid succession. We'll have the drogue parachutes deploy at 2:53 p.m. Pacific, followed by the mains just 1 minute later at 2:54 p.m. Pacific time, ahead of a splashdown at 2:57 p.m. Pacific time off the coast of Tallahassee, Florida.
Pretty incredible views of the Dragon spacecraft making its way home back to planet Earth with the Crew-9 astronauts on board. Once again, this view is coming from the WB-57 plane. That heat shield we can see doing magnificent work as it works to...
Freedom, SpaceX, Comcheck.
All right, we're going to start hearing the SpaceX Crew Operations Resource Engineer.
SpaceX Freedom is with you. 4.16. Enjoying the ride.
Copy that, Freedom.
Great news there from Commander Nick Hague reporting back.
We see a healthy flight computer. Expect automated chute deployment.
Freedom copies.
Like we said before, things moving very quickly as Dragon Freedom makes its way home. Next event coming up will be deployment of the drogue parachutes. This occurs around 18,000 feet.
GPS has converged. Expect nominal altitude for drogue chute deployment.
We're about 2 minutes away from deployment of those drogue parachutes. Now the heat shield is continuing to work to slow the vehicle down. That entry period, the Dragon spacecraft went from orbital velocity about 17,500 miles per hour down to about 350 miles per hour. So that really gives you a sense of why that plasma builds up on the exterior of the capsule, thanks to the heat shield and the work that it does. Those drogue parachutes will slow it down from 350 to about 119 miles per hour. We can see
15 kilometers. Brace for drogue window.
We can see seat rotation happening inside the capsule. Great to get those first views of our crew members. Once again, the capsules are going about 350 miles per hour when the drogues are deployed. Those drogue parachutes that we manufacture here in-house are going to slow the spacecraft down to 119 miles per hour. And that is when we will see the main parachutes deploy, and that occurs about 6,000 feet above the ocean's surface.
And we are expecting drogue deployment at 2:53 p.m. Pacific, so we should see it any second now. And there you are getting a great view of Crew-9 inside Dragon Freedom as it returns back to Earth. We are awaiting the drogue deploys. This view coming from the WB-57 high altitude plane. And there you see it on your screen, drogue deployment.
Drogue descent rate nominal.
You can hear the crowd here.
Visual on 2 healthy drogues.
The crowd here very excited as Dragon Freedom continues to make its way back to planet Earth.
Next up, we'll stand by for the main deployment of the parachutes. The mains are quite a bit larger. You'll be able to notice the difference on your screen once they deploy, and they continue to ensure that the Dragon spacecraft slows down even further. As we mentioned, Freedom will be traveling 16 miles per hour when it splashes down off the coast of Tallahassee, Florida, here at 2:57 p.m. Pacific time this afternoon. And there we go.
We have visual on 4 healthy mains.
That view was from inside.
Freedom copy.
That view was from inside one of the buckets where the parachutes are located. So we see a great view there of the reefing on those parachutes. And as those main parachutes begin to inflate fully, 4 beautiful, healthy mains. Now awaiting visuals of splashdown.
SpaceX Freedom, 1,000.
We'll start to hear Commander Nick Hague.
Copy 1,000.
As we heard right there, Commander Nick Hague will be calling out the altitude of the Dragon capsule from here on out. Landing in water is simpler and provides more margin against unlikely parachute issues. You can see those parachutes continuing to slow the Dragon capsule down.
And if you're just joining us, you're looking at
800 meters.
a live view of Crew-9 just minutes away from splashing down off the coast of Tallahassee, Florida. Splashdown 2 minutes from now at 2:57 p.m. Pacific. We do have 4 healthy mains really doing the job there. Just breathtaking views of a calm, glass-like ocean off the coast of Tallahassee, Florida. Crew-9 just minutes away from splashing down.
This is really such an incredible shot. That
Copy
was
600.
That was a live view from our recovery vessel, Megan, which is stationed a couple miles away from the splashdown site. We can see the crew there using their restraints as resting places for their arms. They were just in space moments ago, so their arms were able to float freely.
400 meters.
This is a gorgeous bluebird day here that we have for the splashdown of Crew-9. It's incredible to think that the Dragon capsule just minutes ago was going over 17,000 miles per hour, and now gently coasting to a soft splashdown.
200.
Copy 200 meters. Brace for splashdown.
As you can see there on your screen, continuing to monitor progress of the Dragon spacecraft. And we're going to stand by for splashdown located in the Gulf of America off the coast of Tallahassee, Florida.
And splashdown, Crew-9 back on Earth.
And SpaceX Freedom, splashdown. Good main release.
We can see those fast boats. We weren't kidding when we said they were fast. While it does take about 30 minutes for the main recovery vessel to make its way over to the capsule, these fast boats will be doing a couple of things simultaneously. A couple of them are going to be working to retrieve the parachutes that you see in the background there of this drone shot. Those parachutes will be retrieved from the ocean surface. We want to make sure we are able to pull those out. The recovery vessel there closest to the spacecraft is going to be performing some safety checks. We can see there they're using an instrument that is basically working to detect if there are any hypergolic vapors or fumes that are still residing in and or around the Draco thruster nozzles or outlets. The hypergolic fuel, which is necessary for on-orbit burns to maneuver the spacecraft. Unfortunately, those hypergolics are unable to be breathed. They are toxic, and so this team here is doing those initial safety checks to make sure that it is safe for the rest of the recovery team to approach the spacecraft. They're also checking to make sure that any residuals from the pyros are safe and are not going to cause any issues. We can see the team working their way around the spacecraft to do these these sniff tests on all of those Draco thrusters.
And as we continue to await the recovery of our Dragon spacecraft with NASA astronauts Nick Hague, Suni Williams, Butch Wilmore, and Roscosmos cosmonaut Aleksandr Gorbunov inside, Dragon has autonomously completed several steps to safe itself following splashdown. We are continuing to see Dragon in what is known as stable 1 configuration. That's kind of the ideal configuration following splashdown. It's upright, and the Dragon capsule is in the right configuration for it to be hoisted into the recovery vessel Megan, which you do see a little ways off in your screen approaching. Dragon will continue to remain live on air with you through that recovery process, all the way through the point where the crew is extracted from the Dragon spacecraft. Now, if you are just joining us, the mission has gone smoothly so far. Dragon successfully splashed down off the coast of Tallahassee, Florida at 2:57 p.m. Pacific, 5:57 p.m. Eastern Time this afternoon.
Approximately 17 hours prior to splashdown, Dragon autonomously undocked from the International Space Station, completed a series of departure burns, jettisoned its trunk section, and performed its final burn, the deorbit burn. This placed the Dragon spacecraft on a trajectory toward Tallahassee, Florida. Dragon successfully re-entered the Earth's atmosphere, followed by deployment of its parachutes to slow the spacecraft down to a gentle splashdown. We're now going to follow the
Freedom, hypergol sweeps and unfired ordnance checks are nominal. Rigging is in progress. Approximately 25 minutes until capsule lift. Stand by for PMC with SpaceX flight surgeon.
This view is straight down the recovery vessel. That platform that was closest to the camera, that is the egress platform.
Freedom, rigging is almost complete. Approximately 5 minutes until capsule lift.
Great news there from SpaceX Crew. So about 5 minutes left until we see Dragon Freedom get lifted out of the water. That hydraulic arm, as I said before, is the mechanism that will lift it. It's quite swift, actually, the whole process of getting the spacecraft.
Brace for capsule lift.
Bracing.
There it goes, Dragon Freedom being lifted out of the water and onto our recovery vessel, Megan.
So once securely on,
Welcome aboard the recovery vessel. Recovery personnel are completing final checks.
and there you have it. The side hatch is open for the first time since September.
We can see some of the protective equipment there that was brought into frame that will help protect the edge of the side hatch. One, from any potential damage. Oh, we can see the recovery crew member there taking photos of the side hatch seal. This is part of the standard operation for recovery. These photos will get saved into our procedure. We'll then install that protective frame around the side hatch. This helps to ensure that the side hatch itself, the edges of it, incur no damage while crew members are coming out from the spacecraft. If you missed it, there was also a recovery team member that went inside. So there are now 5 people on board the Dragon spacecraft.
And if you are just joining us, it has not yet even been an hour since Crew-9 splashed down off the coast of Tallahassee, Florida at 2:57 p.m. Pacific time. The crew is now on board the recovery vessel Megan, and the hatch is open. The next major milestone that we'll see is when the crew will actually egress or exit the spacecraft. But before that, they'll continue to, the recovery personnel rather, will continue to install that protective area around the hatch and then remove the footrests. So we're a couple minutes away from seeing the crew egress, but not too long away.
We'll probably see those footrests being handed out here in the near future, as I mentioned before. Oh, of course, we got to get a well-documented photo of the moment. Although we can't see it from here, I'm pretty sure there are 4 smiles on board right now.
And we did hear that report out from the commander, Nick Hague, following splashdown, that there were four smiles as far as he could see.
Yeah, capsule full of grins. Now, generally speaking...
And there we do see Crew-9, some happy waves, smiles all around back on Earth.
Looks like we're about to get our first crew member here upon egress of the Dragon spacecraft.
So we are standing by for that egress. Outside of Dragon, you do see one of those stretchers. This is the expected procedure as the crew will be taken to medical facilities following their exit from Dragon.
We can see folks on board clapping as our first crew member.
And that is NASA astronaut Nick Hague, commander of Crew-9, now out of Crew Dragon Freedom. Some smiles, thumbs up, and a wave. Can't get any better than that.
Yeah, that is one happy camper, that's for sure. As we said before, it is standard procedure for all of our long-duration crew members to receive assistance upon egressing from the spacecraft. We basically help them move off of the recovery deck and into the private medical quarters for their initial consultation with the SpaceX flight surgeon. So we'll see that take place for all 4 of our crew members today.
And we are standing by for the next crew member to exit Freedom. Next up out of the capsule, we expect Roscosmos cosmonaut Aleksandr Gorbunov. His first space flight. Spent 171 days in space alongside NASA astronaut Nick Hague.
Looks like we're getting some cheers and clapping on board as Aleksandr is slid down the little ramp and placed into the mobility aid. Once again, big smile.
Now, the 2 crew members remaining in Dragon are NASA astronauts Suni Williams and Butch Wilmore. They completed 286 days in space.
One of the remaining footrests being removed from the Dragon spacecraft. As I said before, we generally try to have the crew members that are located in the 2 center seats aboard Dragon, and we like to have them egress first if possible, as it creates a little bit more movable working room inside the spacecraft. There is a recovery crew member inside that is helping all of our Crew-9 crew egress or exit from the spacecraft.
We are standing by for the next crew member to egress or exit Crew Dragon Freedom following the splashdown not even an hour ago at 2:57 p.m. Pacific time. Really have the recovery operations down pretty quick at this point.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible to think that, just 5 years ago when we were doing the initial demonstration missions of the Dragon for Crew Dragon, that now we're under about 30 minutes for, to retrieve the spacecraft from the water, and just several minutes here while it's been on board and to get everyone, really to get that side hatch open. For those of you that have just recently joined, the Dragon had an on-time splashdown. Oh, it looks like we're getting our next crew member here. That is none other than Suni Williams. Big smile, big waves. She, like her other crew members, now will be assisted onto the mobility aid.
There we have it, some waves, some thumbs up, and some smiles.
Definitely seems to be a theme among all recovery operations.
Absolutely. And of course, that leaves NASA astronaut Butch Wilmore inside Dragon in seat 4. We're getting some views of him now as he egresses or exits the spacecraft.
Once again, some elation and cheers there from Butch Wilmore. As we mentioned before, returning to Earth coming from a microgravity environment can wreak havoc on the body. So it is customary and just standard procedure for all of our long-term space residents to get assistance once they are back on board the recovery vessel.